Did you know, in the books, this was the life of Ned Stark before A Game of Thrones? As a younger son, Eddard never imagined becoming the Lord of Winterfell, believing his older brother Brandon was better suited for it. Therefore, he always showed little concern for matters south of the Neck. Eddard had a modest sept constructed at Winterfell so that his new wife Catelyn could worship the Seven. In 289, at the age of 26, Eddard journeyed south to assist Robert in quelling Greyjoy's rebellion, and he took part in the decisive battle at Pike. After Lord Balon Greyjoy's defeat, Eddard brought Balon's only living son, Theon, to Winterfell as a ward and hostage. Although Eddard attempted to act like a father to Theon at times, he always knew that he would be the one to behead him if Balon rebelled again. Ned was 30 when Lord Jorah Mormont attempted to sell poachers he had captured on his lands into slavery. Eddard travelled to Bear Island to bring him to justice for his crime. Upon arrival, Ned discovered that Jorah and Lysanne Hightower had already fled into exile. Eddard has instructed both Robb and Jon Snow in the art of command in battle. Arya has visited White Harbour twice with her father, and Theon Greyjoy accompanied Lord Stark during a visit to Torrhen Square, which Theon would later besiege. The Hill clans have always treated Lord Stark kindly when he visited the Northern Mountains. Eddard hosted Lord Rickard Karstark and his daughter, Alice, when the girl was 6, so Robb might marry her. Mance Rayder was part of Lord Commander Corgyle's expedition to Winterfell to see Lord Stark. Eddard always remains wary of Roose Bolton, Lord of the Dreadfort. This was the life of Robert Baratheon before A Game of Thrones. Donal Noy, who made Robert's Warhammer, said Robert changed after becoming king, and not for the better. When Robert attended small council sessions, he would usually doze off during them. Robert had silver stags minted with his face on them. Robert never had a close bond with Joffrey. Robert disliked that Joffrey always cried when he picked him up as a babe, as his bastard children gurgled at him happily. Nor was he fond of Joffrey's nature. For instance, when Joffrey cut open a pregnant cat to see if there were kittens inside its belly, and then showed his father what he'd done, Robert hit the boy, knocking out 2 of his teeth. Robert claimed he had dreamed of giving up his crown, but that the thought of Joffrey on the throne with Cersei whispering in his ear had stopped him. Robert fathered roughly 16 bastards. However, Robert has openly acknowledged only one, Edric Storm, whom he fathered during Stannis' wedding night with the bride's sister. Robert once suggested bringing Maya Stone, his eldest bastard daughter that he fathered on a commoner while he was still in the Vale of Arryn, to court after Prince Joffrey assaulted the cat. When Cersei threatened the girl's life, Robert hit Cersei, but he refrained from bringing Maya to court. Gendry nearly sleeps with his half-sister Bella, who was conceived during Robert's rebellion. Stannis' knight, Justin Macy, allegedly developed his lustness while squiring for Robert. Robert became good friends with Thoros of Myr, and he keeps Jalabhar Zo at court as a courtesy. During the tourney on Prince Joffrey's name day, Robert won a Valyrian steel dagger from Lord Peter Baelish by betting against Jaime, who was defeated by Sir Loras Tyrell in the lists. This was the life of Viserys Targaryen before A Game of Thrones. After fleeing Westeros and the House with the Red Door, Viserys and Daenerys were entertained by magisters, archons, and merchant princes, but with time their value as the last Targaryens faded. Viserys eventually had to sell their mother's crown, which erased the last of Viserys' happiness, leaving only fury. Daenerys remembers how Viserys once hosted the Golden Company, hoping they would support his cause, but to no effect since they support Blackfyres. Viserys never forgave Daenerys for their mother's death in childbirth. Once, when Daenerys and Viserys were on their way to Braavos by boat, Daenerys expressed to her brother how lovely it would be to be a sailor. Enraged, Viserys yanked her hair until she sobbed, telling her that their line must be kept pure. Daenerys grew up assuming that she would marry him once she reached maturity. Though Viserys' increasing cruelty made their relationship more strained, Daenerys also has sweet memories of her brother from times when he had not yet been so hateful. He let her crawl into bed with him and told her legends about the Seven Kingdoms, about their kin and their history. Almost everything Daenerys knows about Westeros she learned from Viserys, making her feel as if she knew what it was like without ever having been there. In 297 AC, Viserys and Daenerys were accepted by Illyrio Mopatis, a magister of the free city of Pentos, who offered his assistance in reclaiming the Iron Throne for Viserys. They had lived with Illyrio for almost half a year. This was the life of Daenerys Targaryen before A Game of Thrones. Daenerys was conceived during the final month of Robert's rebellion. Shortly thereafter, her mother, Rhaella Targaryen, was dispatched with the young Prince Viserys to Dragonstone to avoid the rebel host which was advancing towards King's Landing. Daenerys was born 9 months after their escape, while a massive storm howled above Dragonstone, sinking what survived of the Targaryen navy. For this reason, she is called Daenerys Stormborn. Her mother died in labor, but not before naming her. After Rhaegar's family was killed, Viserys had been anointed king on Dragonstone. Stannis commissioned a new royal navy in preparation for an invasion of Dragonstone. The garrison at Dragonstone were inclined to sell the Targaryen children to Robert. However, before they could execute this plan, Sir William Darry and several other faithful servants took the children from the nursery and whisked them into exile, traveling to the Braavosian coast. Viserys and Daenerys supposedly resided in Braavos in a residence with a red door, where Daenerys had a lemon tree outside her window. Willem Darry always treated Daenerys gently, but he died when she was 5. After his death, the servants he had employed looted all they could. The young Targaryens were evicted from the house a while after. Viserys and Daenerys departed Braavos and trekked the free cities for years. They visited nearly all the free cities, including Myr, Tyrosh, Cahor, Volantis, and Lys, and returned to Braavos at least once. This was the life of Stannis Baratheon before A Game of Thrones. Stannis served on King Robert's small council as Master of Ships, though he largely remained in King's Landing, leaving his wife Selyse and daughter Shireen behind on Dragonstone. Their marriage was cold, marked by infrequent letters and even rarer visits. In 289 AC, Stannis demonstrated his naval brilliance during Greyjoy's rebellion. He lured Victarion Greyjoy into a devastating trap off Fair Isle, shattering the Iron Fleet before successfully subduing Great Wick. His strict sense of justice was further displayed during a mission to Sisterton to curb smuggling. He executed a dozen associates of Lord Godric Borrell, and threatened the Lord himself with the gallows should any more ships be intentionally wrecked. Despite his record of service, Stannis harbored deep-seated resentment toward Robert. He felt constantly slighted. For the siege of Storm's End, which Robert thanked Eddard Stark for lifting the siege rather than Stannis for surviving it. The fall of Dragonstone. Robert blamed Stannis for the escape of the Targaryen children, despite them fleeing before he arrived. The ancestral seat. Robert granted the Baratheon stronghold of Storm's End to their younger brother Renly, leaving Stannis with the drafty, lesser seat of Dragonstone. While Robert indulged in vice, Stannis performed the grim work of governance alongside the Hand, Jon Arryn. His moral rigidity often clashed with the king's appetites. Robert famously laughed off Stannis' proposal to ban brothels by suggesting they stop breathing as well, though Stannis successfully outlawed prostitution on Dragonstone. Eventually, Stannis began to suspect that Queen Cersei's children were not Robert's true heirs. Realizing the king would never believe such a claim from his envious brother, Stannis brought his concerns to Jon Arryn. Together, they investigated the capital's brothels and smithies to track Robert's bastards, noting the stark contrast between the king's dark-haired natural children and the queen's golden-haired brood. The two became close during this period, even arranging for Jon's son, Robert Arryn, to be fostered on Dragonstone. However, Jon Arryn died suddenly before they could present their evidence to the king. Convinced Cersei had poisoned the hand to protect her secret, and fearing he was the next target, Stannis fled the capital for the safety of Dragonstone. What Aerys Targaryen did to Duskendale was truly horrific. So, all you need to know is Aerys was held captive in Duskendale by Lord Darklan and Hollard while Tywin laid siege before Barristan snuck in and broke the king out. With his hostage gone, Lord Denys Darklan had no choice but to surrender. King Aerys II Targaryen's revenge was ruthless. Although Lord Darklan pleaded for mercy, the king ordered the execution of Denys, his close family, and even more distant members of House Darklan who resided in Duskendale. House Hollard suffered the same fate. Robin Hollard, the squire who had once mockingly pulled Aerys' beard after his capture, was tortured to death on the rack. Only one Hollard survived, the young Dontis Hollard, whose life was spared after Sir Barristan Selmy personally asked the king to grant mercy. Aerys, unwilling to deny the man who had saved him, allowed the boy to live. Denys' wife, Lady Sorella, endured a particularly brutal punishment. Her tongue and womanly parts were cut away before she was burned alive. People theorize she forced herself on the Mad King. Despite these events, many people of Duskendale continued to admire Lord Denys. Rather than blaming him, they laid responsibility on his foreign-born wife, Sorella, and some even believed that the cruel punishment Aerys inflicted on her had been far too lenient. This was the life of Tywin Lannister before A Game of Thrones. Following the death of King Jaehaerys II in 262 AC, Aerys appointed his friend, Tywin Lannister, as the youngest hand in history. Tywin's administrative genius fueled a decade of prosperity. He liquidated royal debts to the Iron Bank using Lannister gold. In 263 AC, Tywin wed his cousin Joanna, a rare occasion that reportedly made him smile. However, tension brewed early when King Aerys allegedly behaved inappropriately to Joanna during the bedding ceremony. Consequently, Queen Rhaella dismissed Joanna from court, and she retired to Castle Rock, where she birthed twins, Cersei and Jaime, in 266 AC. When Titus Lannister died of a heart failure in 267 AC, Tywin became Lord of Castle Rock. He immediately asserted his authority by forcing his father's mistress into a public walk of atonement. Though the Hand and King ruled from the Rock that year, their return to the capital in 268 AC marked a shift. Aerys began systematically undermining Tywin's authority. After Aerys publicly insulted Joanna in 272 AC, Tywin attempted to resign, but the king refused. Tragedy struck in 273 AC when Joanna died giving birth to Tyrion. Devastated, Tywin never remarried. As rumors spread that Tywin truly ruled the realm, Aerys grew paranoid, even ripping out the tongue of Ilyn Payne for voicing such a sentiment. The rift widened during the 276 AC Lannisport tourney, where the crowds cheered louder for Tywin than the king. Aerys further slighted his hand by refusing a betrothal between Rhaegar and Cersei, viewing the Lannisters as mere servants. In 277 AC, the defiance of Duskendale occurred. Despite Tywin's warnings, Aerys was captured by House Darklan. Tywin prepared to storm the city, indifferent to the king's safety, until Barristan Selmy executed a daring rescue. Post-captivity, a delusional Aerys became convinced Tywin wanted him dead to facilitate a Rhaegar-Cersei alliance. The final break came in 281 AC, when Tywin intended for Jaime to marry Lysa Tully, but Aerys instead named the 15-year-old to the Kingsguard. This move stripped Tywin of his heir and turned Jaime into a royal hostage. Claiming illness, Tywin resigned his office and retreated to Castle Rock, pointedly boycotting the tourney at Harrenhal later that year. This was the life of Theon Greyjoy before A Game of Thrones. Theon might have been named after Theon Stark, a king in the north. As a boy, Theon endured beatings at pike from his older siblings, Roderick and Meryn. He obtained his first blade from Dagmere Cleftjaw. Theon was 10 when Greyjoy's rebellion was crushed and his brothers were killed, making him the heir to House Greyjoy and the Iron Islands. Theon was taken from his father and made a ward of Eddard Stark for 9 years before the events of A Game of Thrones. From 11 to 19, Theon was raised with the Stark children and tutored with them in all disciplines, including instructions from Maester Luwin and training at arms from Sir Roderick Castle. His relationship with the Starks is respectful, and he has come to consider Robb a close friend and younger brother. Although they trained together, Theon ignored the sullen Jon Snow. However, though he claims to Catelyn that Lord Eddard was like a second father to him, and Ned indeed attempted to be like a father to him from time to time, the fact that Ned would have to execute him if his father ever rebelled again got in the way of them being close. As a child, Theon used to think that Eddard might marry him to Sansa and claim him for a son. At 15 or 16, Theon travelled with Lord Eddard to Torrhen Square, where he spent a fortnight with Belfred Telhart, whom Theon teased for his large neck. Later, Theon would be responsible for Benfred's death during his betrayal of the Starks. Theon has slept with numerous women, including Kyra and Bessa of the Winter Town, and a miller's wife along the Acorn Water. He lost his virginity to the brewer's wife in Winterfell's Godswood. This was the life of Margaery Tyrell before A Game of Thrones. She lived at Highgarden with her 3 older brothers, Willis, Garland, and Loras. When she was a little girl, Willis used to read to her and draw her pictures. Margaery had been riding horses since she was old enough to walk. According to Cersei, Margaery and Loras look more alike than Cersei and her twin Jaime. Also, Renly Baratheon would claim that Margaery looks like Lyanna Stark, however, Ned does not agree. Margaery is Olenna's protege. The Queen of Thorns made certain that Margaery was capable of protecting herself from those who might use her or abuse her. Varys describes Margaery as sweet and tractable. Sansa considers Margaery to be sweet and gentle, while Cersei considers her to be restless, as Margaery often goes for a ride, a trip by boat, or out hawking. Unbeknownst to Eddard, Renly and Loras were hoping to rid themselves of Queen Cersei Lannister by getting King Robert to become infatuated with Margaery, since to them she supposedly looked like Lyanna. Varys informs Illyroy Mopatis of this, saying that Loras writes his father, Lord Mace Tyrell, urging him to send Margaery to court. During the Hands tourney, Robert mentions to Eddard that Renly has been telling him about Loras's sister, a young girl as lovely as a dawn. This was the life of Viserys Targaryen before A Game of Thrones. After fleeing Westeros and the House with the Red Door, Viserys and Daenerys were entertained by magisters, archons, and merchant princes, but with time, their value as the last Targaryens faded. Viserys eventually had to sell their mother's crown, which erased the last of Viserys' happiness, leaving only fury. Daenerys remembers how Viserys once hosted the Golden Company, hoping they would support his cause, but to no effect since they support Blackfyres. Viserys never forgave Daenerys for their mother's death in childbirth. Once, when Daenerys and Viserys were on their way to Braavos by boat, Daenerys expressed to her brother how lovely it would be to be a sailor. Enraged, Viserys yanked her hair until she sobbed, telling her that their line must be kept pure. Daenerys grew up assuming that she would marry him once she reached maturity. Though Viserys' increasing cruelty made their relationship more strained, Daenerys also has sweet memories of her brother from times when he had not yet been so hateful. He let her crawl into bed with him and told her legends about the Seven Kingdoms, about their kin and their history. Almost everything Daenerys knows about Westeros, she learned from Viserys, making her feel as if she knew what it was like without ever having been there. In 297 AC, Viserys and Daenerys were accepted by Illyroy Mopatis, a magister of the free city of Pentos, who offered his assistance in reclaiming the Iron Throne for Viserys. They had lived with Illyroy for almost half a year. This was the life of Robert Baratheon before A Game of Thrones. Donal Noy, who made Robert's Warhammer, said Robert changed after becoming king, and not for the better. When Robert attended small council sessions, he would usually doze off during them. Robert had silver stags minted with his face on them. Robert never had a close bond with Joffrey. Robert disliked that Joffrey always cried when he picked him up as a babe, as his bastard children gurgled at him happily. Nor was he fond of Joffrey's nature. For instance, when Joffrey cut open a pregnant cat to see if there were kittens inside its belly, and then showed his father what he'd done, Robert hit the boy, knocking out 2 of his teeth. Robert claimed he had dreamed of giving up his crown, but that the thought of Joffrey on the throne with Cersei whispering in his ear had stopped him. Robert fathered roughly 16 bastards. However, Robert has openly acknowledged only one, Edric Storm, whom he fathered during Stannis' wedding night with the bride's sister. Robert once suggested bringing Maya Stone, his eldest bastard daughter that he fathered on a commoner while he was still in the Vale of Arryn, to court after Prince Joffrey assaulted the cat. When Cersei threatened the girl's life, Robert hit Cersei, but he refrained from bringing Maya to court. Gendry nearly sleeps with his half-sister Bella, who was conceived during Robert's rebellion. Stannis' knight, Justin Macy, allegedly developed his lustness while squiring for Robert. Robert became good friends with Thoros of Myr, and he keeps Jalabhar Zo at court as a courtesy. During the tourney on Prince Joffrey's name day, Robert won a Valyrian steel dagger from Lord Peter Baelish by betting against Jaime, who was defeated by Sir Loras Tyrell in the lists. This was the life of Tyrion Lannister before A Game of Thrones. Growing up, Tyrion endured profound isolation as a child, with his father serving as hand in the capital and his older siblings, Jaime and Cersei, soon departing for squiring and court life. Tyrion was left largely alone. A brief window of joy occurred when his uncle Geryon taught him tumbling, but Tywin, ever concerned with the family's dignity, sternly forbade the practice upon his return. Fascinated by the extinct dragons of the Targaryen dynasty, a young Tyrion often fantasized about being a dragon lord. He spent hours staring into the fires within the rock's depths, imagining his tormentors burning in the flames. His obsession was so deep that he even sought out the dragon skulls in King's Landing during Cersei's wedding in 284 AC. Tywin attempted to broker several marriages for Tyrion, but the efforts were met with stinging rejection. Hoster Tully refused Tyrion as a match for Lysa, stating his daughter needed a whole man. Houses Royce and Hightower, both lords, spurned the offer with similar disdain. House Florent, even when offered a sullied bride in Delena Florent, her family preferred a landless knight over the Lannister heir. At 13, Tyrion's life was scarred by his first brush with love. After he and Jaime rescued a common girl named Tysha, Tyrion fell for her and wed her in secret. For 2 weeks they lived happily in a seaside cottage. However, when Tywin discovered the union, he orchestrated a horrific lesson. He forced Jaime to lie, claiming Tysha was a prostitute hired to deflower Tyrion. Tywin then had his entire guard force themselves on the girl for a silver coin each, finally forcing a devastated Tyrion to do the same for a gold piece. The marriage was then annulled by the High Septon. Upon reaching his majority at 16, Tyrion desired to travel to the Free Cities, but Tywin refused, instead mocking his son by putting him in charge of the cisterns and drains at Castle Rock. When his favorite uncle, Geryon, vanished on a quest to Valyria in 291 AC, Tywin again forbade Tyrion from joining the expedition. By the age of 23, Tyrion had settled into life of cynical intellectualism, outfitting himself with custom plate armor and a horse from Jaime, while carrying the burden of his father's eternal disappointment. What was Rhaegar Targaryen doing before the events of Robert's Rebellion? After Tywin resigned as Hand of the King and left court, Aerys focused his mistrust and paranoia at his own son and heir, Rhaegar. At court, there was growing tension between factions loyal to the king and to the prince. Grand Maester Pycelle dispatched a letter to the Citadel, writing that tensions and division at court strongly resembled those before the Dance of the Dragons. In 280 AC, Lord Went announced a grand tournament at Harrenhal. Many within the realm suspected the tourney was a front, secretly funded by Prince Rhaegar Targaryen. The theory suggests Rhaegar intended to use the gathering as a pretext to meet with the Great Lords and discuss a Great Council to formally remove his increasingly unstable father, King Aerys II, from power. However, the plan was compromised when Varys alerted the king to his son's potential scheme. In a rare move, the paranoid Aerys decided to attend the festivities in person to keep watch over Rhaegar and the Lords. During the competition, Rhaegar performed spectacularly, defeating even the legendary Sword of the Morning Sir Arthur Dayne to win the champion's laurels. However, the victory ended in scandal when, instead of crowning his wife, Princess Elia of Dorne, as the Queen of Love and Beauty, Rhaegar rode past her to place the crown of blue winter roses in the lap of Lyanna Stark. The gesture shocked the Seven Kingdoms. Eddard Stark would later describe it as the moment when all smiles died. Within a year, Rhaegar's apparent abduction of Lyanna, whether motivated by prophecy, love, or politics, ignited Robert's Rebellion and sealed the ultimate doom of House Targaryen. The dawn of Robert's Rebellion saw Prince Rhaegar Targaryen largely absent, probably with Lyanna Stark at the Tower of Joy in the Red Mountains of Dorne. When King Aerys II dispatched Sir Gerald Hightower to retrieve him, Rhaegar finally returned to the Crown Lands to take command of the Targaryen forces following Jon Connington's defeat at the Battle of the Bells. He left 3 of his most formidable Kingsguard, Hightower, Arthur Dayne, and Oswell Went, to guard the tower. Rhaegar would then go die at the Battle of the Trident with Lyanna's name on his lips, and his body was traditionally cremated. This was the life of Robb Stark before A Game of Thrones. As the heir to Winterfell, Robb grew up in the shadows of his father's responsibilities, and his closest friend was his half-brother Jon Snow. The two were inseparable from childhood, practicing with wooden swords and dreaming of knighthood. On one occasion, the boys piled a massive mound of snow atop a gate. They were caught by Mance Rayder, visiting from the Night's Watch. Following the Greyjoy Rebellion when Robb was 6, Lord Eddard returned home with Theon Greyjoy. Despite the political tension, Robb formed a strong bond with Theon, who was also 4 years older than him. Alongside Jon, they trained under Sir Roderick Castle. Jon and Robb were both taught by Maester Luwin's guidance, though Catelyn Stark notably bristled whenever Jon eclipsed that of her eldest son. Robb once led his younger siblings into the ancestral crypts to view their future tombs. The excursion ended in chaos when Jon, disguised in flour, jumped out as a ghost. A terrified Bran clung to Robb's legs while Robb laughed at the prank. When Lord Rickard Karstark visited to propose a marriage between his daughter Alice and the Stark heir, Robb proved his maturity by courteously complimenting her dancing, even though no betrothal followed. This was the life of Renly Baratheon before A Game of Thrones. Renly was born in 277 AC at Storm's End, 21 years before the start of A Game of Thrones. Like Robert and Stannis, his parents were Lord Stefan Baratheon and Lady Cassana Estamont. Shortly thereafter, King Aerys II Targaryen dispatched his cousin Stefan towards Volantis seeking a Valyrian-blooded bride for Prince Rhaegar. Stefan failed that mission, though he and Cassana did write to Storm's End mentioning they had discovered a quite gifted fool. During their voyage back from the Free Cities in 278 AC, Stefan and Cassana's vessel, the Wind Proud, met a violent tempest and perished in Shipbreaker Bay, leaving no survivors save the jester Patchface. A young Renly enjoyed bright colors, fabrics, and pretending to be a dragon or a wizard. Renly and Stannis endured the war under siege at Storm's End. Renly did witness the misery of the famished soldiers, while Lord Mace Tyrell and his lords feasted within view of the gates. By 286 AC, King Robert I Baratheon awarded Stannis the lordship of Dragonstone, usually the domain of the king's heir, and awarded Renly Storm's End, entitled him Lord Paramount of the Stormlands. This angered Stannis, who believed that because he was the senior of Robert's younger siblings, Storm's End was his by law. When Renly hit 16 in 293 AC, he held a Lord's Progress through the Stormlands to honor his coming of age. Amidst this journey, he reached the Isle of Tarth, where Renly graciously danced with Brienne of Tarth, and she fell for him. Renly also reached Sunspear once. Princess Arianne Martell remembers that she had worked her hardest to woo him, but notes that Renly had appeared more amused than aroused by her efforts. During his years as Lord of Storm's End, Renly kept Loras Tyrell as his squire. Eventually, Renly and Loras became partners. Renly was finally called to the small council, where he fills the seat of Master of Laws. While he stays at court, his castellan at Storm's End is Sir Courtney Penrose, who has also been handed the task of fostering King Robert's bastard son, Edric Storm. This was the life of Ramsay Bolton before A Game of Thrones. Ramsay is the product of Roose Bolton forcing himself on the miller's wife while hunting along the Weeping Water. He hung the miller under a tree for not informing his lord of the new marriage and made Ramsay beneath his swaying body. A year later, Ramsay's mother arrived at the Dreadfort with the newborn Ramsay. Roose nearly killed her and the babe, but when he saw the child had his eyes, the taboo of kinslaying stayed his hand. The women claimed her husband's brother stole the mill and cast her out. Angered by this, Roose had the man's tongue removed so he would spread no tales to Roose's liege lord, Rickard Stark, Lord of Winterfell. Roose then gave the woman the mill along with a pig, several chicks, and money every year on the condition that she never revealed to Ramsay the truth about who his father was. Ramsay's mother returned again years later, claiming she needed help in raising Ramsay, who grew up wild and unruly. Roose sent Ramsay a servant known as Reek. Reek, despite taking constant washes, always smelled bad due to some unknown birth condition that caused his skin to reek, thus his nickname. Giving him to Ramsay and his mother was actually a cruel jest by Roose, but Ramsay and Reek grew inseparable. Roose would later reflect on whether Ramsay had corrupted Reek or whether Reek had corrupted Ramsay, though Reek would follow Ramsay's orders quite faithfully. Ramsay mentioned once that Reek knew better than to deny him. Despite Roose's instruction to Ramsay's mother, either she or Reek eventually informed him of his true parentage. A year before the events of A Game of Thrones, Roose's heir, Domeric Bolton, attempted to forge a sibling connection with his younger half-brother Ramsay, despite Roose's order not to do so. Domeric soon died of a sickness of the bowels, although Roose believes his heir had been poisoned by Ramsay. Ramsay also earned the enmity of House Dustin, as Barbary Dustin, Lady of Barrowtown, was fond of her late nephew Domeric. Roose brought Ramsay to the Dreadfort as he had no other sons, trueborn or otherwise. Ramsay doubtless learned to read and write while there. Ramsay is accompanied by Dreadfort men called the Bastards' Boys, such as Sour Allen, Luton, and Skinner. However, they are tasked by Roose with spying on Ramsay on behalf of Roose, who laughs at the thought that Ramsay thinks they are his men. This was the life of Ned Stark before A Game of Thrones. As a younger son, Eddard never imagined becoming the Lord of Winterfell, believing his older brother Brandon was better suited for it. Therefore, he always showed little concern for matters south of the Neck. Eddard had a modest sept constructed at Winterfell so that his new wife Catelyn could worship the Seven. In 289, at the age of 26, Eddard journeyed south to assist Robert in quelling Greyjoy's rebellion, and he took part in the decisive battle at Pike. After Lord Balon Greyjoy's defeat, Eddard brought Balon's only living son, Theon, to Winterfell as a ward and hostage. Although Eddard attempted to act like a father to Theon at times, he always knew that he would be the one to behead him if Balon rebelled again. Ned was 30 when Lord Jorah Mormont attempted to sell poachers he had captured on his lands into slavery. Eddard travelled to Bear Island to bring him to justice for his crime. Upon arrival, Ned discovered that Jorah and Lysanne Hightower had already fled into exile. Eddard has instructed both Robb and Jon Snow in the art of command in battle. Arya has visited White Harbour twice with her father, and Theon Greyjoy accompanied Lord Stark during a visit to Torrhen Square, which Theon would later besiege. The Hill clans have always treated Lord Stark kindly when he visited the Northern Mountains. Eddard hosted Lord Rickard Karstark and his daughter, Alice, when the girl was 6, so Robb might marry her. Mance Rayder was part of Lord Commander Corgyle's expedition to Winterfell to see Lord Stark. Eddard always remains wary of Roose Bolton, Lord of the Dreadfort. This was the life of the Blackfish before A Game of Thrones. Brynden Tully is the younger brother of Hoster Tully by 5 years. The brothers were close in their youth. In 260 AC, at age 17, Brynden fought in the War of the Nine Penny Kings against the Band of Nine on the Stepstones. There, he proved himself a grand and worthy knight and gained fame and renown throughout the Seven Kingdoms. After their father died, Brendan's older brother Hoster inherited Riverrun. Hoster sought to betroth Brynden to Bethany Redwyn, but Brynden refused, straining their relationship. While other lords like Lord Bracken and Walder Frey made offers as well, Brynden remained unwed. George R.R. Martin has thus far not shed any light on why Brynden has chosen to remain unwed. When Catelyn Tully was 8, Hoster called Brynden the black goat of the Tully flock during an argument. Brynden pointed out that their sigil was a fish, which made him a black fish instead of a black goat. Brynden took this for his personal sigil, and he became known as the Blackfish. While Brendan's relationship with Hoster was strained, he had a good relationship with Hoster's children, Catelyn, Lysa, and Edmure, as well as Hoster's young ward, Peter Baelish. When Hoster was too busy and Lady Messenia went too ill, the children ran to Brynden with their problems and stories. On the night when Catelyn's betrothal to Brynden Stark was announced, Peter, who had been in love with Catelyn, passed out drunk on a table after Catelyn rejected a kiss from him. In order to prevent Hoster from seeing his young ward like this, Brynden carried Peter away. Hoster and Tywin Lannister, Lord of Casterly Rock, considered betrothing Hoster's younger daughter Lysa to Tywin's heir, Jaime. As such, Lord Sumner Crackhole sent Jaime, his squire, with a message to Riverrun. Hoster took a fortnight to write his reply, during which he sat Jaime next to Lysa with every meal. Jaime ignored the shy Lysa, however, instead pressing Brynden for stories about the War of the Nine Penny Kings. During Robert's rebellion, Hoster agreed to wed Lysa to Lord Jon Arryn, but during the wedding feast, Brynden informed Hoster that he had taken service with Lord Arryn. Considering this to be personal rejection, Hoster disowned Brynden and refused to speak his name for years to follow. Brynden continued to fight in Robert's rebellion, further increasing his fame. Following the conclusion of the war and the ascension of King Robert I, Brynden went with Lysa to the Vale of Arryn and was named Knight of the Gate. This was the life of Gregor Clegane before A Game of Thrones. At 12, the Mountain permanently disfigured his younger brother, Sandor, who was 7, by holding his face to a burning brazier over a toy. Despite this monstrous act, he was knighted 4 years later at age 16 by Prince Rhaegar Targaryen. The Clegane Keep is whispered to be a place of horror where servants vanish without explanation. Kinslaying is suspected, with rumors suggesting Gregor murdered his father, his sister, and his first 2 wives. Animals cower as even the hounds are said to be afraid to enter the halls. The Butcher of the Red Keep, Gregor's most infamous acts, occurred at the age of 17 during the sack of King's Landing. Alongside Sir Amory Lorch, Gregor scaled Maegor's holdfast to eliminate the Targaryen heirs. In a display of subhuman savagery, Gregor killed the son of the man who knighted him by dashing Prince Aegon's head against a wall. He then proceeded to force himself on Rhaegar's wife, Princess Elia Martell, while still covered in her son's blood. While the Crown has never officially confirmed the identities of the killers, Gregor's role in the massacre is common knowledge. Since then, he has continued to serve House Lannister's interests, including the suppression of Greyjoy's rebellion. The Mountain is described by Brendan Tully as a frothing dog, who rarely leaves his own lands except for the carnage of war or the violence of a tourney. Even his own men fear him. His brother Sandor once claimed Gregor killed a soldier simply for the crime of snoring too loudly. Beneath his massive helm, Gregor is a man in constant agony. According to his squire, Joss Stillwood, the knight suffers from blinding headaches, perhaps a byproduct of his giganticism, and consumes massive quantities of milk of the poppy to numb the pain. This was the life of Sandor Clegane before A Game of Thrones. The Hound's life was changed at the age of 7 when a local woodcarver gifted the Clegane brothers toys to curry favor. Sandor's fascination with a jointed wooden knight drew the ire of his older brother, Gregor. Though Sandor feared his brother's brutality, he couldn't resist playing with the toy. When Gregor discovered the supposed theft, he said nothing and forced Sandor's face into a brazier of burning coals, holding him there through his screams until it took 3 grown men to pull Gregor away. Their father covered up the incident with a convenient lie about a bedding fire, but the scars and the rumors of Gregor's true nature made it obvious what happened. After this, tragedy and suspicion continued to follow the Clegane household. A sister died under mysterious circumstances, and their father perished in a hunting accident, leaving the family estates to Gregor. For Sandor, the final blow to his childhood came when Gregor was knighted by Prince Rhaegar Targaryen. This blatant hypocrisy birthed Sandor's lifelong cynicism and his refusal to ever take a knight's vows. The day Gregor came into his inheritance, Sandor walked away from his family home forever. He found his place in the service of House Lannister, claiming his first kill at the age of 12, likely during the sack of King's Landing. Recognizing his lethal efficiency, Queen Cersei Lannister appointed him as sworn shield to Prince Joffrey Baratheon. Over years of service, a dark bond formed. Joffrey developed a twisted fondness for Sandor, frequently referring to him as his dog. Tommen remained terrified of Sandor's gravely voice and horrific scarring. At court, Sandor proved his prowess in the tilt, though he was notably unhorsed by Sir Barristan Selmy during the tourney of 297 AC. This was the life of Olenna before A Game of Thrones. Egg was 28 years old when Olenna was born. Olenna was betrothed to Egg's 4th son, Prince Daeron Targaryen, when they were both 9, but she claims she did everything she could to make sure it never came to fruition. According to Maesters, it was Daeron who broke the betrothal when they were 18 in 246 AC. But really what happened is that Olenna probably schemed to marry Luther Tyrell, the heir to Highgarden, since Daeron was gay and Luther's Targaryen bride wanted to marry her brother Jaehaerys II. It is suggested Olenna slept with Luther before they were betrothed to make sure he would marry her. Eventually, Luther became Lord of Highgarden, and he and Olenna had 3 children together, Mace, Minna, and Yenna. Olenna says he loved Luthor well enough, as he was kind and not unskilled in bed, but she still considered him an oaf. An example she cites is that Luthor rode off a cliff to his death while hawking, because he had been looking up at the sky and not paying attention to where his horse was going. Olenna feels that her son Mace is also an oaf, and regrets that she did not beat him more often when he was a child, as that would have made him more ready to heed her advice as an adult. Olenna's nephew is Paxter Redwyn, Lord of the Arbor, who is also married to her daughter Minna Tyrell. Olenna has twin guardsmen named Eric and Arik, who she refers to as left and right, because she cannot tell them apart. Olenna raised Marjorie so that way she would always be able to protect herself. This was the life of Jon Arryn before A Game of Thrones. Jon Arryn was born when Egg was 18 years old. Jon had a younger brother, Ronald, and a sister, Alice, who married Sir Ellis Waynwood. Because of the Vale Mountain clans, Jon always travelled in strength when crossing the Mountains of the Moon. Jon's first wife was Jean Royce. She died in childbed, their daughter stillborn. His second marriage was to Rowena Arryn, a cousin who died of a winter chill during a childless marriage. Because he had no children, Jon's heir became his nephew Elbert, the son of Ronald. At 40 years old, Jon fought for King Jaehaerys II Targaryen in the War of the Nine Penny Kings in 260 AC. During the war, he made alliances with Lord Rickard Stark of Winterfell and Lord Stefan Baratheon of Storm's End, which resulted several years later in Jon taking their sons, Eddard Stark and Robert Baratheon, as his wards at the Eyrie. As they grew, the two regarded the childless Jon Arryn as a second father. Jon's heir, Elbert Arryn, was murdered by King Aerys II Targaryen in King's Landing, and the Mad King then demanded that Jon execute his wards, Ned and Robert. Jon refused and raised his banners in revolt. Lyn Corbry fought against Jon at Gulltown, but submitted after the battle and joined Jon's host. Jon participated in the Battle of the Bells at Stony Sept, where Denys Arryn, Jon's cousin and new heir, was slain by Lord John Connington during the battle. As Hand, Jon Arryn made peace with Dorne by travelling there. He arranged for Robert to marry Cersei and dissuaded Robert from sending assassins to kill Viserys and Daenerys. Jon Arryn was not successful at curbing Robert's spending, and while he was at court, Jon put Lord Nestor Royce as High Steward of the Vale. Jon appointed Janos Slynt as commander of the City Watch, probably at Littlefinger's suggestion, who ran Jon's books as Master of Coin.
This was the life of Podrick before A Game of Thrones. Podrick was born into a lesser branch of House Payne. His father was a squire for wealthy cousins and his mother was a chandler's girl. Podrick's father died in Greyjoy's rebellion and his mother deserted him when he was 4 years old to flee with a travelling singer. Podrick was left with Sir Cedric Payne, one of the cousins his father had served for. The knight cared for Podrick, though Cedric likely had treated the boy more like a servant than a relative. Podrick had a fine dog named Hero when he was small. When Lord Tywin Lannister summons his banners, Sir Cedric Payne brings Podrick along to groom his horse and scour his mail. Cedric dies in the battles in the Riverlands. Podrick, lonely in the camp, attaches himself to Sir Loromir the Belly, a hedge knight who was part of Lord Leos Ledford's units guarding the baggage train. Loromir steals a ham from Lord Tywin's private stocks and is hanged for it. But Podrick, who had shared the meat, is spared due to his family's name. Sir Kevan Lannister takes custody of him. Podrick passes into the service of Tyrion Lannister as his squire after Tyrion joins the Lannister host in the Riverlands. He is so silent that Tyrion in one instance makes him stick his tongue out to ensure that he has not lost it, as his kinsman Sir Ilyn Payne did. Tyrion believes that Podrick has been gifted to him as some mean joke. Podrick helps ready Tyrion for the battle on the Green Fork. This was the life of Oberyn Martell before A Game of Thrones. During childhood, Oberyn Martell played with his siblings, Doran and Elia, in the Water Gardens. In his adolescence, Oberyn was fostered at Sandstone. When in his teens, Oberyn journeyed with his mother and his sister, Elia Martell, and encountered several potential wedding prospects for his sister, touring fortresses at Starfall, the Arbor, Old Town, the Shield Islands, and Crackhole. Oberyn spent his hours ridiculing Elia's admirers. The final castle they visited was Castle Rock, where they reached shortly after the demise of Lady Joanna Lannister in labour. According to Oberyn, his mother and Joanna had intended to marry either Oberyn to Cersei Lannister or Elia to Jaime Lannister, or both. Lord Tywin Lannister, however, was dismissive of the overture, remarking that his daughter would wed Prince Rhaegar Targaryen. He suggested the infant Tyrion Lannister as a spouse for Elia instead, which was regarded as an affront. At the age of 16, Oberyn was discovered in bed with the mistress of Lord Edgar Yornwood. So the Lord provoked him to a duel. The match was to first blood, given the prince's youth and noble birth, and both sustained nicks. Edgar's injuries infected and killed him. Oberyn has been tilted as the Red Viper ever since by allies and rivals alike, due to rumours that he fought the duel with a venomous blade. Afterward, Oberyn was dispatched to Old Town and then to Lys in brief exile, though none dubbed it such, in order for House Martell to forge peace with House Yornwood, and Prince Quentyn Martell was sent to ward to Yornwood. Oberyn travelled widely in the Free Cities, where he mastered much about toxins and perhaps even darker crafts. He had practiced at the Citadel, going so far as to craft 6 lynxes of a scholar's chain before he became wary. He campaigned in the disputed lands across the Narrow Sea, riding with the Second Sons for a time before creating his own company, which might be the brave companions terrorizing Westeros and turning the people against the Lannisters. This was the life of Sir Arthur Dayne before A Game of Thrones. Arthur Dayne was ranked by everyone to be the fiercest of King Aerys II Targaryen's Kingsguard. However, George R.R. Martin claimed that Barristan Selmy and Arthur were equal with standard blades. However, if Arthur used Dorne, he would best Barristan. Arthur Dayne was Jaime's idol and a close friend of Rhaegar Targaryen. Arthur carried the great sword named Dorne, made from meteorite, wearing it upon his back. To crush the Kingswood Brotherhood, he won the hearts of the peasantry of the Kingswood by buying what he and his troops used and bringing their compliments before King Aerys Targaryen. Ultimately, Arthur killed the Smiling Knight in personal combat and broke the power of the bandits. Following that success, he knighted Jaime Lannister, who would eventually become a fellow member of the Kingsguard. Arthur was the victor in the competition in honor of Viserys' birth in 276 AC, besting Rhaegar Targaryen. In another contest, Arthur broke 12 spears against Rhaegar, falling to the prince. At the tourney at Harrenhal in 281 AC, he was beaten by Rhaegar yet again. Now, according to a semi-canon report, Arthur, alongside his fellow sworn brother, Sir Oswyl Went, helped Rhaegar in the abduction of Lyanna Stark near Harrenhal as the year of the False Spring was closing. Robert's rebellion started shortly after. After the end of the uprising, Arthur, Oswyl, and Sir Gerald Hightower were located by Lord Eddard Stark at the Tower of Joy. Arthur perished there, battling Eddard and his companions, but the specific details of his passing are unknown. Bran Stark remembers his father calling Arthur the finest knight he had ever met, and explaining further that Arthur could have killed him if not for Howland Reed. Rocks from the tower were used to construct his grave upon a nearby hill. After Arthur's death, Eddard travelled to Starfall, the home of House Dayne, to deliver the sword Dawn to Arthur's sister, Lady Ashara Dayne, as a mark of honour, where she supposedly threw herself from a tower. However, she is most likely alive and is maybe secretly Septa Lemure, tutoring Rhaegar's son on the faith of the Seven. This was the life of Mance Rayder before A Game of Thrones. So we learn from Celise Florent that Mance's mother was a wildling and his father a brother of the Night's Watch. After several raiders were executed during Mance's youth, he was captured by the Night's Watch and reared among them. Per a semi-canon report, his surname of Raider reflects this history. A scout from the Shadow Tower, Mance frequently sang of Bael the Bard following ventures beyond the Wall. 10 years before the events of Game of Thrones, Lord Commander Corgyle journeyed to Winterfell to consult Lord Eddard Stark, with Mance among the Black Guards accompanying him. In Winterfell, he met the little Robb Stark and Jon Snow performing a trick and vowed to stay silent. Years later, Mance was mauled by a Shadowcat while scouting and saved by a wildling girl, a healer's child. While he recovered, she fixed his ripped cloak with scraps of red silk. After returning to the Wall, Sir Denys Mallister ordered Mance to discard his patched cloak for one of solid black. This denial of liberty moved Mance to desert the Shadow Tower and join with the Free Folk to live how he chose. Mance spent years slowly uniting diverse tribes into one army, finding backing from clan leaders and magnas. He brokered peace between Harmed Dogshead and the Lord of Bones, the Hornfoots and the Night Runners, plus the men of the Frozen Shore and the Ice River clans. Challenged by 5 other potential kings beyond the Wall, Mance won the loyalty of Tormund of Ruddy Hall and Steer of Thenn and killed the 3 enemies who declined to yield. Now, we believe that Mance is Arthur Dayne, Tormund is Gerald Hightower, and Corran Halfhand is Oswell Went, and Val is the child of Rhaegar and Lyanna, and maybe Jon Snow's twin sister. This was the life of Catelyn Stark before Robert's Rebellion. Catelyn had 2 older brothers who both died in infancy, causing her father to regard her as his heir until the birth of Catelyn's younger brother, Edmure. At Riverrun, Catelyn, Lysa, and Peter Baelish would play with each other and go to the Blackfish if they ever needed help. Once, Catelyn and Lysa made mud pies and served them to Peter, who ate them and, as a consequence, was sick for a week. Catelyn and Lysa also practiced kissing with Peter in the Godswood, where Peter attempted to stick his tongue in their mouths, an attempt which Catelyn halted, but Lysa both allowed and enjoyed it. Once at Oldstones, Catelyn played at being Jenny of Oldstones, while Peter had pretended to be her Prince of Dragonflies, or Egg's eldest son, Duncan Targaryen. At 12, Catelyn was betrothed to Brandon Stark. Afterwards, Catelyn and Peter danced 6 times. However, when he tried to kiss her, she pushed him away and laughed at him. Peter, wounded by the rejection, became drunk and had to be brought to bed by Catelyn's uncle, Brendan Tully. Catelyn's younger sister, Lysa, who had fallen in love with Peter, snuck into Peter's chambers and slept with him that night. However, the drunken Peter believed he had slept with Catelyn. When the date of Catelyn's wedding was announced, Peter challenged Brandon to a duel for her hand. Catelyn refused to give Peter her favor when he asked, giving it to Brandon instead. She begged Brandon not to kill Peter, and he agreed. Peter was severely injured during the duel, and the final cut Brandon gave him was so brutal that Catelyn was convinced the younger boy would die from it. Peter did not die, however, but was given a fortnight to recover at Riverrun before being sent away. Catelyn did not go see him during this time, nor did she say her farewells to him when he left Riverrun. After the duel, Brandon left Riverrun as well, promising Catelyn to return soon for their wedding. When Brandon was on his way back to Riverrun a few days before the wedding, he learnt about the disappearance of his sister, Lyanna Stark, and the involvement of Rhaegar Targaryen. Furious, Brandon rode to the Red Keep, where he was arrested by Rhaegar's father, King Aerys II Targaryen. When Brandon's father, Lord Rickard Stark, went to King's Landing to champion Brandon in his trial by combat, both men were executed in the throne room. Shortly thereafter, Robert's Rebellion began. After Brandon had died, Peter sent Catelyn a letter which she burnt without reading it. By then, her father had promised her hand to Brandon's younger brother, Eddard. This was the life of Maegor the Cruel as a child. Born in 12 AC to Vjuzhanina, Maegor was a large and robust infant, nearly double the weight his older half-brother Hernaiz had been. Maegor and Hernaiz remained distant as youths. Maegor stayed with his mother on Dragonstone. He obtained his first blade at the age of 3 and loved weaponry at once. He allegedly slaughtered a cat with the steel, though many suspect this tale as a lie. Nevertheless, when Maegor was 8, he stabbed to death a horse which had kicked him and sliced off half the face of the stable hand, who came rushing towards the creature's shrieks. By the age of 12, he was already unseating kids 4 or 5 years his senior in the tilts and beating veteran men-at-arms into surrender. His mother handed him her Valyrian steel blade, Dark Sister, as a name day gift at 13. Despite the fact that there were various dragon hatchlings on Dragonstone, Maegor never took a dragon of his own. When his good sister, Alyssa Velaryon, mocked him that he was scared of dragons, Maegor glared and stated that only one was worthy of him. Maegor's sibling, Hernaiz, had wedded Lady Alyssa Velaryon when Maegor was 10, and their daughter Rhaena was born the following year. After Rhaena's birth, the debate started as to whether Maegor would slip behind her in the line of succession. When Maegor had turned 11, Queen Vjuzhanina proposed a betrothal between Rhaena and Maegor to fix the inheritance problem. But both Rhaena's parents, Hernaiz and Alyssa, and the High Septon objected. Instead, Maegor was promised to the High Septon's niece, Lady Cerys Hightower, whom he wedded at 13 at the Starry Sept in Oldtown, in a rite conducted over by the High Septon himself. Though Maegor bragged that he had sired a child on his wedding night, the union remained sterile. At 16, Maegor gained glory in a tourney by besting 3 knights of the Kingsguard in the joust, and then winning the melee. He was knighted by his father, King Aegon I, making him the youngest knight in the kingdom at the time. At 17, Maegor helped the Master of Ships, Lord Aethan Valyrion, and the Hand of the King, Sir Osmond Strong, in 2 crusades against the pirate king Sargasso San in the Steppe Zones, and in 31 AC crushed the Giant of the Trident. This was the life of Maegor after his father's death. Maegor was 25 when Aegon I died. King Hernaiz I assumed power. Acknowledging he lacked his younger siblings' martial prowess at their father's cremation, Hernaiz gifted Maegor the Valyrian steel sword, Blackfire, declaring joint leadership. Thereafter, Maegor claimed Balerion, his father's beast, which he had always desired. Soon after Hernaiz' coronation, various uprisings erupted. Within the Vale, Jonos Arryn overthrew his brother, Lord Ronald, jailing him and his kin. Though reaching Lord Ronald too late, Maegor personally ended this revolt, riding Balerion to the Eyrie. Seeking Maegor's clemency, Jonas' men tossed Jonos out the moon door. Nevertheless, Maegor executed every survivor. To succeed Lord Alan Stokeworth, killed battling different rebels, King Hernaiz I appointed Maegor as Hand of the King to honor his victory, a position Maegor kept for 2 years. Despite marrying at the age of 13, Maegor and Cerys remained childless. That year, Maegor abruptly declared Cerys sterile and revealed his second spouse, Lady Alice Harroway. Failing to persuade Dragonstone Septon to officiate, Maegor and Alice wed during a Valyrian ritual conducted by Dowager Queen Visenya Targaryen. This union sparked outrage. Maegor fought fiercely with his brother, King Hernaiz, while Cerys' brother, Lord Martin Hightower, insisted Maegor abandon Alice. The High Septon condemned the marriage as sinful lust and labelled Alice this of Harroway. Numerous devout lords across the kingdom followed suit, publicly calling Alice Maegor's. Maegor stayed obstinate, though noting his father possessed 2 wives as well, arguing faith laws did not govern the dragon's blood. Feeling concerned and being incredibly weak, Hernaiz offered Maegor a choice: renounce Alice or accept 5 years exile. Maegor picked the latter, and in 40 AC departed for Pentos with Alice and Balerion. He additionally kept Blackfire, ignoring Aenys' demand to surrender the blade. Septon Myrmison replaced Maegor as Hand. Then, in 41 AC, Aenys designated his firstborn, Prince Aegon the Uncrowned, Prince of Dragonstone. Once Maegor was safely away in Pentos, the Faith ignited rebellion against King Aenys and would have extinguished House Targaryen if not for Maegor. This was the life of Cersei Lannister before A Game of Thrones. Following the conclusion of Robert's rebellion, a political marriage was brokered between Cersei and Robert to cement the alliance between Lannister and Baratheon. They wed in 284 AC. Though Cersei was initially swept up in the grandeur of the royal wedding, her affection vanished on their wedding night when a drunken Robert whispered the name Lyanna in her ear during their first intimate and disappointing encounter. The union decayed almost immediately. Cersei resumed her infectious affair with her brother, Jaime, even sleeping with him on the morning of her wedding. While Robert spent his time hunting and Cersei used his absences to be with Jaime. During a visit to Estermont early in the marriage, Cersei suspected Robert of infidelity with a cousin. In retaliation, she and Jaime conceived their first son, Joffrey, in 286 AC. Cersei successfully passed off her 3 children as Robert's trueborn heirs. While the king was always away hunting during their births, Jaime remained present, even forcing his way into the birthing room for Joffrey's arrival. To protect the secret of their parentage, Cersei strictly forbade Jaime from holding the boy in public. The marriage was defined by mutual resentment and domestic abuse. Robert's heavy drinking often led him to physically hurting Cersei during intimacy. When confronted, he would hide behind the drink to avoid accountability. Cersei, in turn, began visualizing Rhaegar Targaryen during their encounters to endure them. On the one occasion she became pregnant by Robert, she had Jaime find a woman to cleanse her, ensuring she never bore the king's blood. Eventually, as Robert's interest shifted entirely to prostitutes, their marital bed went cold for years at a time. Cersei's ruthlessness extended to Robert's bastards. When Robert suggested bringing one of his illegitimate daughters to court, Cersei made lethal threats that the king struck her, though he ultimately backed down. Rumors also persisted that she ordered the murder of Robert's bastard twins at Castle Rock in 295 AC. Eventually, Stannis Baratheon noticed that the royal children lacked the Baratheon look and teamed up with the Hand to investigate. This was the life of Vhagar before House of the Dragon. After Visenia's death, Vhagar remained unridden for 29 years, spending much of that time on Dragonstone and the Dragon Pit in King's Landing and hanging out with Balerion. It was in 73 AC that Prince Baelon, the Spring Prince, after achieving knighthood, set out to follow his brother, Prince Aemon, and become a dragon rider claiming Vhagar. Baelon on Vhagar, along with Aemon on Caraxes and Jaehaerys on Vermithor, burnt the Dornish fleet that attempted to invade the Stormlands during the Fourth Dornish War in 83 AC. After the death of Balerion in 94 AC, Vhagar became the last of the 3 Targaryen dragons who had fought in the conquest. Vhagar became rideless again when Prince Baelon passed away in 101 AC. Vhagar's next known rider was Lady Laena Velaryon at the age of 12. According to the Maester at Driftmark, the seat of House Balerion, Laena loved to fly. When Laena wed Prince Daemon Targaryen in 115 AC, they flew upon their dragons across the narrow sea to Pentos, Volantis, Qohor, and Novos. Everywhere they went, huge crowds came to catch a glimpse of Vhagar and Caraxes. After Laena gave birth in 116 AC, Daemon brought both his own dragon and Vhagar back to Westeros. Laena and Daemon grew close with Daemon's niece, Rhaenyra Targaryen, and the 3 often flew together upon their dragons, Vhagar, Caraxes, and Syrax. Lena died early in 120 AC. It is said that Lena attempted to reach Vega in her final hour as to fly one last time, but she did not have the strength. Following Lena's funeral on Driftmark, the 10-year-old prince Aemon Targaryen claimed Vega as his own dragon. During the Dance of the Dragon, Vega had grown nearly as big as Balerion had been during Aegon's conquest. During the battle at Rook's Rest, Vega and Aemond and King Aegon and Sunfire ambushed the dragon Meleys and her rider Rhaenys Targaryen. Meleys was an old and large dragon, and might have stood a chance against Vhagar alone, but died from the combined assault. Vhagar was the only dragon who left the battle reasonably unharmed. This was the life of Balerion the Black Dread after Maegor the Cruel's death. 54 years after the conquest, Prince Aeria Targaryen claimed Balerion from the yard of Dragonstone one morning. They disappeared and went missing for more than a year. King Jaehaerys I Targaryen sent expeditions to try and locate Balerion and the young princess, but none succeeded. Rhaena Targaryen departed on Dreamfire to search for Balerion and her missing daughter. Balerion returned to King's Landing in 56 AC, descending into the courtyard of the Red Keep, with Aeria barely clinging to him. The princess was severely ill and died soon after with fireworms inside her body. Bath's accounts describe wounds and half-healed scars on Balerion. The dragon bore a huge jagged scar down his left side, almost 9 feet long, and fresh blood still dripping from the wound, hot and smoking. Bath speculated that when Aeria claimed Balerion, she was unable to bend the dragon to her will, and instead the dragon had taken her to the place he had been born, Valyria. Shortly thereafter, Balerion became the first dragon to be housed in the Dragon Pit, where he was guarded by the Dragon Keepers. Years later, Prince Baelon Targaryen, the Spring Prince, smacked Balerion on his snout the first time the boy entered the Dragon Pit. When Princess Alyssa Targaryen came to the Dragon Pit to claim a dragon of her own in 75 AC, the Dragon Keepers persuaded her not to try and claim Balerion, insisting that the dragon had become old and slow, suggesting to her that she would much prefer a faster dragon. The last rider of Balerion was Prince Viserys Targaryen, who entered the Dragon Pit to claim the dragon in 93 AC. Balerion was hard to rouse and struggled when Viserys urged him into the sky. They flew around King's Landing 3 times, although Viserys later confided to his father that he had originally intended to fly Balerion to Dragonstone. However, fearing the dragon lacked the strength to do so, Viserys had opted otherwise. Balerion died a year later in 94 AC, and with it, the last creature to have seen Valyria in its might. Anyway, subscribe for more.